You know, we've all done it. You step outside on a clear night, you look up, and you just feel small. In the best way possible. That huge, star-filled sky has been captivating people for, well, forever. But what if you could do more than just wonder? What if you could actually read that map of light? All right, let's get into it.
It's a totally universal feeling, right? You see all those twinkling lights, and you just know there are patterns up there, stories hidden in plain sight, but where do you even begin? Well, think of this as your starting point. So let's start with the absolute basics. When we talk about finding shapes in the sky, what we're really talking about are constellations. But what does that word actually mean?
At its core, a constellation is just a pattern. It's a group of stars our brains have decided to connect, like humanity's ultimate game of connect the dots. For thousands of years, these patterns helped us tell stories, track the seasons, and even navigate the globe.
Now, while there's nothing stopping you from making up your own patterns, modern astronomy needed a single official map. I mean, can you imagine the chaos if scientists all over the world were discovering new things but naming the locations differently? That's why the International Astronomical Union stepped in and standardized the sky into these 88 official constellations. Together, they cover the entire celestial sphere, leaving no gaps. But these 88 patterns, they aren't just random dots on a map. No, they have this rich, fascinating history that perfectly blends ancient mythology with the very real, practical need to map the heavens.
A lot of the constellations we know in the West today came to us from the ancient Greeks. They looked up and saw their entire mythology playing out above them. You know, heroes like Orion and Perseus battling monsters. The Romans later adopted these same stories. And what's so cool is that these ancient myths now serve a modern scientific purpose, giving astronomers a shared map to locate things in deep space. And this is a really important point. The Greco-Roman system we're familiar with, it's just one version of the story. For instance, Chinese astronomy divided the sky into hundreds of different star groups. Indigenous Australians saw things like canoes and emus, where the Greeks saw hunters and scorpions. The night sky is this universal canvas, but the art drawn on it is beautifully unique to each culture.
Okay, so that's the history. Now for the fun part. How can you actually get out there and start spotting these things for yourself? Well, the good news is you really don't need a fancy telescope. In fact, most constellations are best seen with just your eyes.
Let's just walk through the steps here. First, and this is the big one, get away from city lights. Light pollution is your #1 enemy. Second, use a tool. A simple app on your phone can point everything out for you. And look, don't try to learn all 88 at once. Just focus on the brightest ones for whatever season you're in. And this is crucial. Give your eyes about 20 minutes to fully adapt to the dark. You'll be amazed by how many more stars just appear. And finally, just be patient. This isn't a race.
So, where should you start? Well, if you're in the northern hemisphere, Orion the Hunter is the undisputed king of the winter sky. You absolutely can't miss his famous 3-star belt. In the summer, look for the distinct hook shape of Scorpius. Ursa Major is up there pretty much year-round in the north. And for our friends down in the southern hemisphere, Crux, the iconic Southern Cross, is your go-to.
All right, now that you know how to find them, let's dig into some of the really fascinating secrets hidden inside these star patterns. This is where it gets really interesting, beyond just the shapes. Okay, here's a super common mix-up we need to clear up. The difference between a constellation and an asterism. The easiest way to think about it is this. A constellation is an official region of the sky, kind of like a state border on a map. An asterism, on the other hand, is just a famous, recognizable pattern of stars, which is often just a small part of a much bigger official constellation.
And the perfect example of this is the Big Dipper. I mean, everybody knows the Big Dipper, right? But technically, it's not a constellation. It's an asterism that forms the back and tail of the much larger official constellation, Ursa Major, the Great Bear.
Okay, this one is genuinely mind-bending. When we look at Orion's belt, we see this perfect flat line of 3 stars. But in reality, in 3-dimensional space, they have nothing to do with each other. They're cosmic strangers that just happen to line up perfectly from our vantage point on Earth. But they're actually separated by hundreds of light years. It's all a matter of perspective.
Here's a fun one for you, especially if you ever read your horoscope. We all know the 12 zodiac signs, right? Well, astronomically speaking, the sun's path through the sky actually crosses through 13 constellations. Yep, there's a forgotten one, Ophiuchus, the serpent bearer. Sorry, Ophiuchus. And the impact of these star patterns isn't just ancient history.
it's still with us today in very public ways. The constellation Crux, the Southern Cross, is so culturally important in the Southern Hemisphere that it's featured right on the national flags of several countries, including Australia, New Zealand, and Brazil.
So, as we start to wrap this up, let's bring it all back together. The key thing to remember is that constellations aren't just myths or a simple game of connect the dots. They're actually a fundamental tool for understanding our place in the universe.
They really are this beautiful blend of story and science. They connect us to our ancestors, sure, but they also have very real practical uses. For centuries, sailors navigated the vast oceans using the constellation Ursa Minor because it contains Polaris, the North Star, a nearly fixed point in our constantly spinning sky. Ultimately, learning the constellations is like learning to read a whole new language, one that's written across the entire universe. It transforms the night sky from just a random scatter of lights into a familiar landscape, filled with stories, science, and direction. So the only question left is, which chapter will you read tonight?